Hi, I'm Jane. Life hasn't always been easy, but nothing prepared me for the upheaval that followed my father's passing. Not long after, my mom remarried, bringing a new figure into our world, Chris, my stepbrother. At 17, he was much older than me and, from day one, seemed to take pleasure in making my life difficult. "Why are you always hanging around? Can't you go somewhere else?" His voice echoed through the cramped living room almost every night, even on days when I felt good. His sharp words stung. I vividly remember winning a school science fair and racing home to show my mom the trophy, only for Chris to ruin the moment. "Mom, can you believe this ridiculous little trophy? Really? This is what makes her happy? Pathetic," he sneered, and instead of standing up for me, my mom just pursed her lips, shaking her head, disappointed, but at me, not him. When I tried explaining how he treated me when she wasn't around, it was as if I was talking to a wall. "Chris is still adjusting, Jane. You need to be patient. He's been through a lot too," my mom would say, brushing aside my feelings while immersing herself in other tasks, always something else more important. But it wasn't just cruel words. One day, I caught Chris rifling through my room, reading my diary. The very next day on the bus, he shared my secrets aloud. "Hey, listen up, everyone, dear diary. Today Tommy smiled at me, and my face turned bright red." "Oh, how precious," he mocked, while laughter from the other kids felt like a dagger to my heart. When I confronted him later, he shrugged. "Relax, I was just messing around. Don't be so sensitive." His grin wide, unapologetic. The tipping point came when my cat, Whiskers, was injured. One day, I found her limping, barely able to walk. The vet said she'd been kicked hard. I knew it was Chris, but when I told my mom, she wouldn't hear it. "Chris wouldn't hurt a fly. You're just trying to stir up trouble," she snapped, her eyes cold with disbelief. That's when I knew I had to get out. My half-brother, Sam, and his wife, who had seen how broken I was, opened their home to me. Sam became my rock, my protector. "You're safe here, Jane. You can always count on us," Sam reassured me as I carried my things into their guest room. My tears were heavy with both sorrow and relief. Living with Sam and his wife brought me the peace I had longed for. They cheered me on as I focused on my studies, and I channeled all my energy into becoming a nurse. I wanted to help others, perhaps because I knew all too well what it felt like to be powerless, and as I tended to wounds and cared for patients, I slowly began to heal my own heart, far away from Chris and his cruelty. Then, one day, out of the blue, my phone rang. The voice on the other end was strangely warm, almost affectionate. It had been years since I'd spoken to my mom, and her sudden change in tone raised alarms. "I'm doing well, Mom. What's going on?" There was a brief pause, then a heavy sigh. "Jane, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. It's about Chris. He's in some financial trouble." Of course, it was about Chris. It always was. My grip tightened on the phone as I braced myself. "He's racked up a lot of student loans, Jane. We were hoping you could help him out." Her request hung in the air, thick and uncomfortable. "Help Chris? After everything he put me through?" "I'm sorry, but no, I can't do that." The warmth in her voice disappeared in an instant. "So, you're really going to turn your back on your family?" "He's never been family to me, not with the way he treated me." Silence, then the line went dead. She had hung up. A few days later, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, there stood Chris, as smug as ever, with my mom right behind him. My stomach dropped. "We need to talk, Jane. Let us in," Chris barked, already pushing his way inside. "I've already told you, I'm not helping," I said firmly. Chris laughed, pacing around like he owned the place. "Look at you, living all comfortable. You owe us." "I owe you nothing," I shot back, feeling my anger build. "Chris," my mom started, her voice trembling, "maybe we should." "No, Mom, she needs to pay up. She's got the money. Why should I have to struggle because she's selfish?" Their entitlement and presence were suffocating. Just then, Sam came in, his timing perfect. "What's going on here?" Sam's voice cut through the tension. "They just showed up. I didn't invite them," I explained, my voice steady. Sam turned to Chris and my mom, his gaze hard. "It's time for you to go." Chris puffed up, trying to act tough. "You can't throw us out, we're family." "Family doesn't treat each other like that. You heard Jane. It's time to leave." A tense standoff ensued, but eventually, Chris and my mom left, the cold silence of their absence filling the room. I slumped against the wall, a mixture of relief and sadness washing over me. Sam rested his hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Jane. Don't let them walk all over you. I nodded, knowing deep down he was right. The ties had been cut long ago, but today, it felt final. As they drove away, I knew this chapter with Chris and Mom was truly over. My real family was here, standing by my side. Once they were gone, the quiet felt deafening, though my mind was louder than ever. Sam sat next to me, his presence reassuring. You okay, Jane? I will be. I just can't believe they showed up demanding money like that. Sam nodded, sensing the weight of what had just unfolded. Chris has always been a manipulator. Maybe it's time his actions caught up to him. His words sparked an idea, a surge of determination rising within me. What if we make sure they do? What if we expose him for who he really is? You mean go public? Yes, I know people in his industry. If they knew the real Chris. Sam thought for a moment, then nodded. It's risky, but it might be the only way to stop him. The next few days flew by. I reached out to old classmates, some of whom now held important roles in Chris's field. What started as casual conversations turned into opportunities to share carefully documented proof of his behavior, emails, recordings, testimonies from others he had tormented. Are you sure about this? Mia, a former classmate now in HR at a company Chris was applying to, asked. Yes, he shouldn't be in a position to hurt anyone else. She sighed, agreeing. I'll make sure the hiring committee knows. This stays between us. With each phone call, each piece of evidence handed over, I felt stronger and more in control than ever before. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. What if this all backfired? But then I thought of Chris's smug face, his threats, and my resolve grew stronger. Sam was there with me through it all, making sure I stayed focused. Remember, we're doing this not for revenge, but to protect others. As the days passed, word began to circulate. Chris had been discreetly blacklisted, interviews cancelled, offers withdrawn. The industry had taken notice of the warnings and responded. One evening, Sam and I were relaxing on the porch when a message came in from Mia. It's done. Chris is finished. Your info spread. He won't be working in this field again. A weight lifted off my chest, and I exhaled deeply. It's over, Sam. Finally, it's done. Sam smiled at me with pride and relief. You did well, Jane. You really did. As we watched the sunset, I realized this wasn't just about ending Chris's toxic influence. It was about reclaiming my power. It was about shifting from being a victim to becoming the victor. The aftermath of the confrontation left me shaken, but also more empowered than ever. I had stood up not only for myself, but for anyone else who could have been caught in Chris's web. With Sam by my side, I knew I had made the right decision. As night fell and the stars appeared, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. This chapter was over, and I had won. The impact of my actions rippled through my life in unexpected ways. News of Chris's downfall spread, and his isolation was evident, even from a distance. The man who once thrived on manipulation and fear was now abandoned by the very people he thought were his allies. No more smug looks, no more threats, just the consequences of his actions catching up with him. One cold evening, after a long shift at the hospital, I got a message from an unknown number. Hesitant, I opened it to find a long, rambling text from my mother. She wrote about regret, misunderstandings, and wanting to be a part of my life again. Instead of comfort, it stirred up old pain. I can't believe she still doesn't get it, I muttered as I started typing a response. My fingers hovered over the screen, torn between the hurt of the past and the pull of family. After a long pause, I erased what I had written and simply replied, I need space. Please respect that. Sending that message felt like closing a door, a final acceptance that some wounds are too deep to heal with just words or time. The next morning, as Sam and I had coffee in the early light, he noticed my quietness, his brow furrowed with concern as he reached across the table, his hand warm on mine. Everything okay? He asked. I sighed, the weight of the past days settling in. It's Mom. She messaged me last night, wants to reconnect. Sam's grip tightened slightly, protective. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, exhausted. It feels like she only reaches out when it suits her. I can't keep going through this, Sam. He nodded, his understanding without judgment. You need to do what's best for you, Jane. If that means distance, then that's what you have to do. His words stayed with me as I went about my day, a soothing reminder that I had the right to protect myself. Later that week, while scrolling through social media during a break, I saw a post from one of Chris's old friends. It was a public call-out. detailing more of Chris's misdeeds and showing solidarity with those he had wronged. Comments flooded in, each one sharing a story of betrayal, a shared burden lifted into the open. The post was a stark reminder of the power Chris once had, now turned against him. His reputation wasn't just damaged, it was destroyed. With every story shared, the community healed, stronger and more aware. As the weeks passed, I found strength in the rhythm of my life, in helping my patients, and in the home Sam and his wife had opened to me. Their unwavering support was the family I had chosen, and who had chosen me. One evening, as we all sat watching a movie, my phone remained silent, a welcome break from the world. In that peaceful moment, I realized I no longer needed validation from those who never truly gave it. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving, surrounded by people who loved me for who I was, not for what I could give. As the movie credits rolled and we laughed over a funny scene, I felt a deep sense of calm. Life had twisted and turned, but now it was in my favor, leading me away from the past and toward a future filled with hope and real connection. I was free, truly free, not just from Chris, but from the family I was born into, but never really belonged to. Looking back on my journey, I saw how far I had come, from a scared, overshadowed girl to a confident woman supported by a family who truly cared. I had learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about the people who stand by you when you need them most. Thank you, I whispered, not to anyone in particular, but to the universe, to fate, for bringing me to this place, to these people. With a deep breath, I closed that chapter of my life, not with sorrow, but with gratitude and love. Moving forward, I carried the lessons of the past, but also the promise of tomorrow, new beginnings, and endless possibilities. I was finally where I was meant to be. Jane's story has reached its end, but here's something to ponder. Do you think cutting ties with toxic family members is necessary for healing, or is there always a chance to mend those relationships?